Okay, so to kickstart this next section, we have yet another vote, which is, do you find first dates nerve-wracking? Now, the reason I've asked this question is because I know a lot of you out there won't go onto a first date thinking, wow, this is great, I'm going to have fun, going to really enjoy meeting this new person, I'm going to be curious about them. A lot of you are going to be thinking, this is worse than a job interview. So my goal in this section is to give you some ideas about how you can make that conversation flow a little bit more easily, and also to help make it more fun for you. And I'm going to start with that point I mentioned just recently about authenticity. Now, I know what you're thinking when I'm saying just be authentic. It does sound quite a lot like that old piece of dating advice that used to drive me absolutely bananas when I was single, which was just be yourself, because it's like, well, that's great, but what do you mean? Like, I'm being myself and people aren't connecting with me. So let me explain what I mean by authenticity and when's the right time to use that in the context of a date. So by being authentic, authenticity to me means being candid and feeling comfortable to share some of your feelings and experiences with someone. Now, just like I mentioned with the messaging, often it's this sharing which really helps us to become relatable, and it helps to create trust. Just like I said before, there's this reciprocation that happens in a conversation. So if you show a willingness to be open with the other person, it sends a signal to them, which is, hey, you can also be really open with me too. A great time you could use this on a date is perhaps in the first few minutes when you meet someone. So can you go onto that date and have an intention that you're just going to share with the person you meet how you feel or how you felt in the run up to that date? Could it be you were like, oh my gosh, traffic was so bad, I was terrified I was going to be late? Or I'm so glad this bar is nice, I'd only checked it out on Google Maps before and I was like, oh, I might have made the wrong decision. Could it be that you're like, you know, it's great that you're so bubbly and so friendly, it's made me much less nervous about meeting you this evening? Now, you may think that by saying something like, it's making me less nervous, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm coming across as unconfident, that must be unattractive. And in fact, sometimes just the opposite can be true. If we're comfortable with ourselves and we can speak openly to someone, it can say a lot about our self-esteem. We're not there to put on a performance or impress somebody else. Instead, we're really focused on expressing ourselves and figuring out through that who's a good match potentially for us. So try and get that out of the way in the first few minutes of the conversation, and also combine it with things like smiling, making eye contact, and perhaps in this post-COVID world, saying something like, are we doing hugs? Because it's this openness and this warmth that will translate and send a message to the other person of, we can speak openly to one another. We don't have to be formal. This doesn't have to be small talk. We can speak to one another like we've known each other for a really long time already. And that sets a really nice precedent for emotional intimacy that you can have throughout the date. Just going on to this, that somebody called Per gave some really good advice here in the chat box, and they said, meeting a partner is a long journey, learn to appreciate the journey as well. And it's so true. I think when you're single, understandably, you get really focused on, oh my gosh, how can I meet someone? When am I going to meet someone? Am I going to be single forever? When instead, finally, the irony is, and you can ask your non-single friends about that, usually when you do get coupled up, you then look back and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, I used to have all that free time. I used to have all this time to invest in myself. I learned so much about myself during that time of being single. So remember that when you're single, there is never a better time to invest in yourself and learn about yourself and discover yourself and build yourself up. So relish and enjoy this time, because sooner or later, and it will happen in the blink of an eye, you won't be single anymore, and you'll actually probably look back on this time with some really fond memories. So definitely enjoy the journey. In terms of what's a good thing to also talk about on your dates, the second pointer I have for you today is all about being thoughtful. Now again, being thoughtful might not sound like the flirtiest, coolest thing you can do, but it can be a really great way of demonstrating both your own standards to your date and that you show care towards them. So it's really nice when you go onto a date to show that you've remembered some details about your date's life that are important to them. So if you can say, oh, how was that your big meeting this week? It will show that you're really present and connected to who they are. So yes, a great thing to do on your way over to the date might be just to power read the messages that you've sent to the person recently, so you can kind of get fresh in your mind about who they are and what they're about. If there's also, you can get bonus points here, if there's any way you can also tailor your date to what you know about this person. If you're at the bar and you go, oh my God, you're a rosé wine drinker, right? Should we get 2 glasses of that? It will again help the other person to feel really listened to. Or if they say they love playing board games, maybe you can bring a pack of Uno cards along. Anything that creates this feeling of I've been really listened to, or this person's really considerate, again, is a really great basis for a date, and it also will help your date to be more unique. Being thoughtful can also be a great way to communicate your standards. So how about this as a topic of conversation? How about you tell them why you chose to go on a date with them in the first place? Could you tell them the moment you were like, wow, okay, I'm really interested to get to know this person better? If you introduce this as a topic of conversation and you say, you know what, actually, it was when I discovered you're an entrepreneur or a teacher, or you did so much for your family, that I was like, wow, I really want to meet this person. Again, it's going to actually do quite a lot to create a spark and demonstrate that you have standards and reasons why you've chosen to be sat in front of them today. So don't dismiss thoughtfulness as cheesy. It can actually be a great thing to bring into your conversation skills. The third tip for conversation today is that you actually don't need to have stuff on paper in common to be similar as people. Now, whether it's in how we choose a partner and who we choose to message in the first place, or how we organise the conversation on a first date, a lot of the time people may approach conversation like a game of Snap, which is, you like tennis? Oh great, I like tennis. Or you like tennis, damn, I don't know anything about that. Or you like jazz music, damn, I don't know anything about that. So when we do this, we become very caught up in superficial preferences and topics. And often this can make you feel like, oh gosh, we've got nothing to talk about because we like totally different things. But the knack here really is to realise, yes, you can like totally different things on paper, but you can enjoy the experience of them, or you can get similar feelings from them as people. So, for instance, if someone's a die-hard yoga fan, if you said, oh, how do you feel after you get out of a yoga class? Or, what makes you want to go to yoga so religiously 5 times a week? Now, they may say, relaxation, escapism, energized. Now, you may not be into yoga, but you may think of something else in your life that gives you that feeling of maybe a bit of escapism. Is it that you like to go for a long run, or you like to lose yourself in a book or a good movie? So although how you get to that feeling is through different things, you can then connect on the emotion that you both share. So don't be too put off by feeling like you need to have everything in common. You actually don't. It's all about how you choose to talk about these topics of conversation. And remember to really look out for those emotional areas of commonality, more than just we happen to like the same stuff on paper. Another great thing that you can do to get back to your values and use those as a way to direct and build the conversation is to think about what qualities you'd like to have in a partner. Now, if you don't have too much relationship experience, don't worry. You don't need it to do this exercise. All I want you to do is, whether it was previous partners or just people that are really important to you in your life, I want you to think about what are your top few qualities that you would love to have in someone that you're meeting and connecting with. I asked this question to a lady once, and she said she wanted a guy who was KFC, kind, funny and caring. So I want you to think, what's your KFC? What are 3 qualities that's just really important to you? Now, when you have those qualities in mind, you probably don't want to go onto a date and go, so you're kind, you're funny, you're caring, and approach it too much like a checkbox list. Instead of asking questions around this, you can instead choose to share. You can say, I find it really attractive when someone can make me laugh. Or if you notice the other person demonstrating one of the qualities you like, say that they've said they've just gone to, spend the weekend helping their mum out, if you acknowledge, it's really nice that you're so caring, or I can see you're a really kind person, that's really important to me. By making statements like these, they again provide a really good, deep level compliment to someone, whilst also demonstrating that you're not here just to impress anyone, but you actually have standards around who you would like to have as your partner. If that's too vague for you as a concept, a simpler way you can look at it is just to go into that first date and think, what would make me more attracted to this person to know about them? Or what would I think is fun and interesting to talk about?